The massive chamber stretched out like a small city, stood at the entrance and tried not to feel small. Above her head, the ceiling disappeared into darkness. Around her, creatures from across the galaxy filled seats that looked like they were made for gods. She had never seen anything like this place. The Nexus Prime Council Hall could hold 1 million beings. Today it held representatives from 847 different species. Some floated in the air. Others needed special tanks filled with gas or liquid. A few were just balls of light that somehow spoke. Looked down at her simple black suit and felt out of place. She was the only human here. They sat in the center of the hall. They looked like living crystal statues, tall and sharp. Their leader wore a crown made of starlight. They had ruled space for 50,000 years. Next to them sat the architects. These beings looked like walking buildings made of metal and stone. They were older than much older. Near the front, balls of pure energy danced in the air. These were the eternal chorus. They had no bodies at all, just mind and power. They spoke in voices that sounded like singing wind. Found her seat. It was in the very back corner. The chair was too big for her human body. She sat down and tried to look confident. Around her, aliens whispered and pointed. She heard the words they used: primitive, newcomer, barely evolved. The High Coordinator of the stood up. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall. We gather today because our galaxy faces death itself. The Void Devourers have awakened. A cold silence fell over the chamber. Had read the files on the trip here. The Void Devourers were ancient things. They ate entire star systems. They had slept for millions of years in dark space. Now they were moving again. The High Coordinator continued. 3 systems have already fallen. New Arcadia, the cluster, all gone. Every planet, every star, nothing left but empty space. Images appeared in the air above the chamber. Watched as a beautiful blue star simply disappeared. One moment it was there, lighting up space around it. The next moment, nothing, just darkness. The Devourers moved toward the core worlds, the High Coordinator said. We have perhaps 6 months before they reach civilized space. We must act. One by one, the great species stood to speak. The architects suggested building massive walls in space. They could block the Devourers with force fields the size of solar systems. The Eternal Chorus wanted to hide. They could create pocket dimensions where some could survive. The Hegemony of Worlds proposed gathering every warship in the galaxy. They would make one giant fleet and fight the Devourers head-on. The Wise Ones suggested negotiation. Perhaps the Devourers could be reasoned with. Listen to each idea. They all sounded the same to her. Run, hide, or throw everything at the enemy and hope for the best. These were the responses of civilizations that had grown comfortable. They had not fought a real war in thousands of years. Hours passed. The aliens debated and argued. Their words grew longer and more complex. They spoke of ancient treaties and cosmic laws. They quoted philosophers who had died before humans learned to make fire. Raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. 800 pairs of eyes turned to look at her. Some of those eyes were not eyes at all, but she felt them watching anyway. The High Coordinator tilted his crystal head. The human wishes to speak. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults make when a child says something cute. Felt her cheeks burn, but she stood up. I have studied the attack patterns, she said. Her voice sounded tiny in the huge space. The Void Devourers are not random. They follow paths. They have weaknesses. Weaknesses? The voice came from somewhere in the crowd. Child, these beings destroyed the First Empire. They ended the Golden Age. What could a species that learned to fly yesterday possibly know about fighting them? More laughter, waited for it to stop. You are all thinking like prey, she said. The laughter died. Every solution you suggest is defensive. Build walls, hide, gather together and hope your size scares them. But predators are not scared by the size of the herd. They are excited by it. The High Coordinator leaned forward. His crystal face showed something like interest. Continue. The Devourers feed on star energy, said. While they are feeding, they cannot move quickly. They are vulnerable. Small, fast ships could strike them during feeding cycles, hit them when they cannot dodge. Impossible, said a new voice. This came from the Eternal Chorus. Their words sounded like music, but cold music. The energy fields around a feeding devourer would destroy any ship that came close. Human ships are different, said. We build them to survive, not to be comfortable. Our pilots train to fly through dangerous space. We have been doing it for 500 years. The chamber erupted in sound. Aliens spoke over each other in dozens of languages, caught fragments of translation, suicide mission, barbaric, typical human arrogance. The High Coordinator raised one crystal hand. Silence returned. You suggest we use human tactics, he said. Small unit warfare, individual heroics. This is not how civilized beings fight wars. No, agreed. This is how we win them. The Wise One spoke next. Their voice was ancient and tired. Child of Earth, your species has existed for perhaps 200,000 years. We have studied war for millions. We know what works. Looked around the chamber, at the floating energy beings and crystal giants, at creatures older than her entire species. They were all looking at her like she was a curious animal that had learned to talk. Then why are you all so scared? She asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. In the silence that followed, realized she had crossed a line. These beings did not like being questioned by humans. They especially did not like being called scared. But it was too late to take the words back, and was not sure she wanted to. 3 days passed. Watched the greatest minds in the galaxy debate the same ideas over and over. She began to see the problem. It was not that these species were stupid. They were incredibly smart, but they were stuck. They had ruled space for so long that they could only think like rulers. Every solution involved commanding others to obey. The architects saw everything as a building problem. Make bigger walls, build stronger defenses. The Eternal Chorus treated war like a song that must follow ancient rules. None of them could think like hunters. Had grown up on a farm on Earth. Her family raised cattle. She knew the difference between predators and prey. Predators moved fast and struck weak points. Prey gathered together and tried to look big. The galaxy was acting like prey. On the morning of the 4th day, received a message from home. Admiral had sent her new intelligence reports. Human scouts had been watching the Void Devourers for weeks. What they found was important. Studied the data during the morning session. While the Architect Supreme explained his plan for a defensive wall around the core worlds, she ran calculations. The numbers told a story. The Void Devourers were not random destroyers. They were efficient. They chose targets based on energy output. They moved in predictable patterns. Most important, they had a weakness that no one else had noticed. When the Architect Supreme finished his presentation, stood up. The chamber groaned, literally. Some of the aliens made sounds of annoyance. They had heard enough from the human. I request permission to present new intelligence, said. The High Coordinator waved a crystal hand. Very well, but be brief. We have important matters to discuss. Activated her portable projector. Images filled the air above the chamber, star maps, movement patterns, energy readings. The Void Devourers are not unstoppable, she began. They are animals, very smart animals, but animals nonetheless. They hunt in packs, they follow migration routes, and they make mistakes. She changed the image. Now it showed a devourer feeding on a star. The creature was huge, easily the size of Earth's moon. Dark tentacles wrapped around the star, draining its energy. While feeding, a devourer extends its energy absorption field. This field is powerful, but it has gaps. Small objects can pass through if they approach from the correct angle and at the correct time. Murmurs spread through the chamber, continued. Human fighters are small. Our pilots are trained to fly through asteroid fields and solar storms. We can get close enough to damage their feeding apparatus. Ridiculous, said a voice from the hegemony section. The energy fields would cook any pilot alive. Human pilots wear radiation suits, said. We have been flying through dangerous space since we left our home system. Our ships are built to survive impacts and radiation. Your ships are built to be comfortable. This caused an uproar. The idea that human ships might be better at something than alien ships was offensive to most of the chamber. Waited for quiet, then continued. We have run simulations. A coordinated strike by 50 human fighters could disable a devourer's feeding system. This would force it to retreat to recover. 50 fighters against a cosmic horror, the eternal chorus sang their disbelief. This is madness. This is asymmetric warfare, corrected. David versus Goliath. It works because the enemy does not expect it. She changed the image again. Now it showed the predicted devourer approach routes. If we can delay each devourer by forcing feeding interruptions, we can buy time. Time to evacuate civilian populations. Time to build better defenses. Time to study them and find permanent solutions. The chamber was quiet now, had their attention even if she did not have their respect. The High Coordinator studied the star maps. Your plan requires sacrificing these fighters, human lives. Yes, said simply, but fewer lives than your plans would cost. You would ask your people to die for the galaxy, said the wise one, a galaxy that has shown humans little welcome. Looked around the chamber, at beings who had dismissed her species as primitive barbarians, who had laughed at human ideas, who treated Earth like a curiosity. Human pilots volunteer for dangerous missions, she said. We do not force anyone to be heroes, but when the choice is death with honor or slavery with shame, humans choose honor. The silence stretched out, could feel the weight of 800 civilizations thinking. For a moment, she thought they might listen. Then the High Coordinator spoke. The human plan is noted and rejected, he said. While we appreciate the enthusiasm, this strategy represents unacceptable risk to valuable personnel and equipment. Valuable personnel, repeated. Human pilots may be expendable to your species, the High Coordinator explained, but the ships they would fly are not. Those fighters could be better used as scouts or messengers. Suicide attacks are wasteful. Felt something cold settle in her stomach. You think our people are expendable. All soldiers are expendable, said the Architect Supreme, his voice like grinding stone. But some are more expendable than others. Humans reproduce quickly and live short lives. Other species invest centuries in training each individual. The chamber murmured agreement, realized they were not being cruel, they were being practical. From their perspective, humans really were more expendable than other species. We prefer the plan, the High Coordinator continued. Orderly retreat to prepared positions, negotiated settlement with the devourers. Some systems must be sacrificed for the greater good. His blood ran cold. Which systems? The High Coordinator consulted his crystal tablet. 12 lesser systems, newer colonies with smaller populations, Earth, New Geneva, 438b, the usual suspects. Stared at him. You want to feed human space to the devourers. And 11 other minor systems, the High Coordinator said, as if this made it better. It is regrettable but necessary. The core worlds must be protected. The vote will be called tomorrow, announced the Wise One. All in favor of the compromise signal agreement. Watched as lights appeared across the chamber, green lights for yes, red for no. The green lights overwhelmed everything else. 843 green lights. 3 red lights. Could not see who else had voted no, but it did not matter. Only one red light mattered to her. Stood in the ocean of green light, and understood that the galaxy had just voted to sacrifice her entire species to save themselves. Sat alone in her quarters that night. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from across the galaxy hanging in space above Nexus Prime. Beautiful ships with elegant curves and artistic designs. Ships built by civilizations that had known peace for thousands of years. Somewhere beyond those ships, hidden in the outer system, waited the human fleet. Not elegant ships, but practical ones, built for war by a species that had never forgotten how to fight. Opened her communicator and typed a single message, "Phoenix authorized." She deleted the message without sending it. Not yet. There was still hope that sanity might prevail. The next morning brought the final session. The High Coordinator called for order as the chamber filled with representatives eager to approve the compromise and return to their comfortable lives. "Before we finalize the treaty," the High Coordinator announced, "the Eternal Chorus will present the detailed terms." The energy beings swirled in the air as they spoke. Their voices harmonized into words that could barely understand. The translation came through her earpiece in simple language. 12 systems will be designated as sacrifice zones. The populations of these systems will be evacuated to refugee camps in the core worlds. The empty systems will be offered to the Void Devourers as tribute. In exchange, the Devourers will agree to spare all remaining galactic civilization. Raised her hand. "What happens to the refugees?" The Eternal Chorus paused in their song. "Refugee populations will be assigned work duties appropriate to their capabilities. Humans will be suitable for physical labor in mining operations and construction projects." "Slaves," said quietly. "Workers," the High Coordinator corrected. "Housed and fed in exchange for honest labor. The colonial authority has generously agreed to manage human resettlement." Looked at the crystal beings who had just volunteered to own her species. "And if humans refuse this generous offer?" "Why would they refuse?" asked the Architect Supreme. "The alternative is death. Civilized beings choose survival over pride." Stood up, every alien eye in the chamber turned toward her. She walked slowly to the center of the hall, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. "You want to know why humans would refuse?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. "Because you fundamentally misunderstand what humans are." She activated her communicator, not to type a message, but to open a live channel to the human fleet. Her words would be heard on every human ship in the system. "You see us as primitive because we still fight wars," continued. "You think this makes us less evolved than you, but you are wrong. Our wars made us stronger. They taught us things you have forgotten." The High Coordinator leaned forward. "What could war possibly teach that peace cannot?" "That freedom is more important than safety," said. "That some things are worth dying for, and that the moment you accept slavery to avoid death, you have already lost everything that makes life worth living." She raised her communicator to her lips. "Admiral, this is Ambassador. Authorization code Bravo 77. Execute Phoenix protocol immediately." A new voice filled the chamber. Admiral's words came through's communicator, but they boomed from speakers throughout the hall. "Phoenix protocol confirmed and acknowledged," the Admiral said. "All human vessels are weapons-free. Repeat, all human vessels are weapons-free. Target designation, Void Devourers. Rules of engagement, unrestricted." The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted and demanded explanations. The High Coordinator's crystal form blazed with angry light. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Smiled for the first time since arriving on Nexus Prime. "The meaning is simple. While you spent 3 days debating surrender, humans spent 3 months preparing for war." She gestured to the windows. In the distance, lights began to appear, ships dropping out of hyperspace. Not dozens of ships, hundreds of ships. You wondered why Earth sent only one ambassador to this meeting, continued. You assumed it was because we are unimportant. The truth is that everyone else was busy. More ships appeared. Recognized the designs. Cargo haulers that had been converted to carry missiles. Passenger liners equipped with military-grade shields. Corporate shuttles armed with mining lasers. Even civilian pleasure craft loaded with improvised weapons. For the past year, every human in space has been preparing for this day, explained. Not preparing to debate or negotiate or surrender, preparing to fight. The Wise One's ancient voice filled the chamber. This is madness. You cannot fight the Void Devourers with converted cargo ships. You are right, agreed. We cannot fight them the way you would fight them. We cannot match their raw power or their size, but we can do something you have forgotten how to do. What? Demanded the High Coordinator. We can be unpredictable, said. While your species spent millions of years becoming civilized, humans spent the last few centuries learning to adapt. We fight in ways you consider impossible. We take risks you consider insane. We sacrifice in ways you consider wasteful. The displays around the chamber began showing new information. Reports from across the galaxy. Human ships appearing in star systems where no one expected them. Small squadrons moving through space routes that civilized species considered too dangerous to travel. How? Whispered the Architect Supreme. How did you deploy so many ships without us detecting them? Turned to face the crystal giant. Because you were not looking for us. You were looking for invasion fleets and battle groups, military formations that follow your rules of war. You were not looking for families in converted freight haulers, or corporations relocating their entire operations to strategic positions. She gestured to the continuing reports. While you debated, humans scattered across the galaxy like seeds. We have eyes and ears in every system now. More importantly, we have weapons. The High Coordinator's voice rose to a thunderous boom. You have doomed the galaxy. The Devourers will destroy everything because of your arrogance. No, said calmly. The Devourers will destroy everything because you are cowards. You chose to feed them rather than fight them. You decided that some lives are more valuable than others. You forgot that freedom is not negotiable. She walked back toward her seat but stopped halfway. The offer stands. Any species willing to fight under human command is welcome in the resistance, but understand the terms. We do not sacrifice innocence to save ourselves. We do not negotiate with monsters, and we certainly do not kneel to anyone. Reached her communicator again. Admiral, transmit the tactical data to all vessels. Phoenix 1 is authorized. Confirmed, came the Admiral's response. All units, this is Admiral. We have positive identification on Void Devourer Alpha approaching the 442 ruins. Strike teams Alpha through Delta, you are cleared to engage. Remember, we are not here to win pretty. We are here to win. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans were not just refusing to surrender. They were actively attacking the Void Devourers, while the galaxy's greatest civilizations were still deciding how to hide from them. Sat down in her chair and looked around the chamber. The human delegation formally withdraws from these proceedings. We have a war to fight. For the first time since arriving on Nexus Prime, felt proud of her species. The displays around the chamber began flashing with incoming reports. Watched as the faces of 800 alien representatives changed from annoyance to confusion to something approaching fear. The first report came from the 442 system. A human strike team had engaged Void Devourer Alpha during its feeding cycle. The massive creature had been forced to release its grip on the dead star and retreat to open space. Impossible, breathed the Architect Supreme. Nothing has ever made a Devourer retreat. More reports flooded in. At the Vega Nebula, human fighters had used the nebula's natural interference to approach unseen. They struck just as Void Devourer Beta began feeding on a gas giant. The creature's feeding tentacles had been severed. It fled the system. Stood up slowly. Around her, the chamber buzzed with frantic alien conversations. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries were suddenly sharing tactical data and demanding explanations. "You want to know how we did it?" asked. Her quiet voice somehow carried over the chaos. The chamber fell silent. She walked to the center of the hall again, but this time she did not look small. Something had changed. The aliens watched her with new eyes. "You made assumptions about us," continued. "You assumed we were primitive because we fight among ourselves. You never asked why we fight or what those fights taught us." A new report appeared on the displays. The system, where human colonists had been evacuated only months earlier. Void Devourer Gamma had arrived to feed on the abandoned worlds. Instead of empty planets, it found converted mining stations armed with fusion bombs. The explosions had damaged its feeding apparatus. "Every human conflict taught us something different," explained. "Our corporate wars taught us economic warfare. Our colonial rebellions taught us asymmetric tactics. Our world wars taught us total mobilization. You see these as shameful parts of our past. We see them as education." The High Coordinator's crystal form pulsed with agitation. "You are using suicide tactics, throwing away lives for temporary victories." "Are we?" gestured to the displays. "Show me the casualty reports." The tactical displays shifted to show battle damage. The aliens stared in disbelief. Human losses were minimal. 18 fighters damaged, 3 pilots injured, 0 fatalities. "How?" demanded the eternal chorus. "Because we do not fight fair," said simply. "Fair fighting is for sports and honor duels. War is about winning. We hit targets the Devourers cannot defend because they never expected anyone to be crazy enough to try." Another report flashed across the screens. Void Devourer Delta had been approaching the heavily populated system. A single human cargo hauler, the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, had jumped directly into the creature's path. Instead of attacking, the ship had activated every beacon, transmitter, and communications array it carried. The electromagnetic noise had disrupted the Devourer's navigation systems. The creature had missed the system entirely and wandered off into empty space. The chamber erupted in amazed chatter, raised her voice over the noise. "That cargo hauler was crewed by a family," she said. "Parents and 3 children. They volunteered for a mission that could have killed them all. Do you know why?" She looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes that could no longer dismiss her as primitive. "Because humans understand something you have forgotten. We are not just individuals trying to survive. We are part of something larger. When the galaxy voted to sacrifice human worlds, you thought you were making a practical decision. You never considered that you were making an enemy." The displays showed new activity. Human ships were appearing in systems across the galaxy, not just military vessels but entire communities. Families, businesses, schools, hospitals, all mobile, all armed, all moving toward strategic positions. For 500 years, humans have been preparing for the day when we would have to stand alone, continued. Every colony ship was designed to be self-sufficient. Every trading vessel was built to double as a warship. Every settlement was planned with evacuation and defense in mind. The wise one spoke, its ancient voice filled with something like awe. "You have militarized your entire civilization." "No," corrected. "We have made our entire civilization resilient. There is a difference. You build great monuments to your power and culture. We build things that can survive when the monuments fall." A priority alert flashed across all displays. Void Devourer Alpha, the first creature to be attacked by humans, was transmitting something. The translation came through quickly. The message was simple: pain, confusion, fear. The chamber fell dead silent. For the first time in recorded history, a Void Devourer had communicated fear. Smiled grimly. "You were wrong about something else. You assumed the Devourers were forces of nature, unstoppable cosmic events, but they are not forces of nature. They are bullies, very powerful bullies, but bullies nonetheless. She gestured to the message still displayed overhead. And the thing about bullies is that they expect their victims to be afraid. When someone fights back effectively, bullies become confused. When someone hurts them, they become afraid themselves. More tactical reports flooded in. Across the galaxy, void devourers were changing course. Some were retreating from systems they had planned to attack. Others were avoiding areas where human ships had been detected. "You want to negotiate with them," said to the chamber. "You want to offer tribute and hope they leave you alone. But predators do not respect tribute. They respect strength. And the only way to show strength to a bully is to hit back." The High Coordinator stood up, his crystal form towering over. "Even if your tactics work temporarily, you cannot win a prolonged war. The Devourers are too powerful, too numerous." Looked up at the crystal giant without flinching. "You are probably right. Humans might lose this war. We might all die fighting creatures we cannot hope to match." She paused, letting that sink in. "But we will die free. Our children will know that we faced the darkness and chose to fight rather than kneel. And maybe, just maybe, we will hurt the Devourers enough that they decide the galaxy is not worth the trouble." The chamber was completely quiet now. 800 civilizations absorbed the implications of what they had witnessed. Turned toward the exit. "As I said, the offer stands. Any species willing to fight under human tactical command is welcome, but understand what that means. Human command means human rules. No negotiations with the enemy. No sacrificing innocence for strategic advantage. No retreat when advance is possible." She reached the chamber doors and paused. "Oh, and one more thing. When this war is over, assuming any of us survive, the galaxy is going to be a very different place. You might want to think about what kind of neighbors you want humans to be." Walked through the doors, leaving behind 800 alien representatives who were finally beginning to understand that the primitive species from Earth had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Stopped at the threshold of the great chamber. Behind her, she could hear 800 alien voices speaking at once. Fear, confusion, and something that might have been respect filled the air. She had not planned to stop. The dramatic exit was complete. She should have kept walking, but something made her turn around one last time. The massive displays now showed a galaxy-wide view. Red dots marked void devourer positions. Blue dots showed human forces. Green areas indicated successful defensive actions. The pattern was clear even to alien eyes accustomed to thinking in cosmic scales. The void devourers were no longer advancing. For the first time since their awakening, they had stopped. "Impossible," whispered someone in the crowd. Looked back at the sea of alien faces. Beings who had ruled space for millions of years. Species that had built wonders beyond human imagination. Civilizations that had achieved perfection in art, science, and philosophy. All of them staring at displays that showed a species barely 500 years old, accomplishing what they could not. "You want to know what is really impossible?" asked. Her voice carried clearly through the stunned silence. "Impossible is 800 civilizations agreeing to sacrifice billions of lives rather than risk a fight. Impossible is species that conquered death itself choosing to surrender to predators. Impossible is the greatest minds in the galaxy deciding that slavery is better than danger." She walked back into the chamber. Every step echoed in the vast space. "But you know what is not impossible," she continued. "Teaching a bully that victims can bite back, showing predators that prey can become hunters, proving that courage is not about having no fear, but about acting despite fear." A new priority alert flashed across the displays. This one came from deep space, beyond the galaxy's rim. Long-range sensors had detected something unprecedented. The void devourers were gathering, not to attack, but to communicate. For the first time in recorded history, the ancient creatures were talking to each other. The message was complex, but the translation systems managed to parse the meaning. Small ones bite, pain spreads. Consider retreat. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and demands. How could creatures that had destroyed civilizations be considering retreat from a species they had planned to ignore? Raised her hand for silence. Amazingly, the 800 species quieted down to listen to the human. They are learning what we learned long ago, explained. That size and power mean nothing if you cannot use them effectively. The Devourers are used to facing civilizations that fight like you do. Big fleets, formal tactics, predictable strategies. She gestured to the tactical displays, showing human forces scattered across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. They do not know how to fight an enemy that refuses to follow the rules. An enemy that hits from everywhere and nowhere. An enemy that treats every ship like a potential weapon and every civilian like a potential soldier. The High Coordinator finally found his voice. You have turned your entire species into a military force. No, corrected for the final time. We have turned our entire species into a family, and families protect each other. Another message arrived from the Void Devourers. This one was directed not at each other, but at the galaxy itself. Small ones cause pain beyond their size. Feeding here brings more cost than benefit. We seek easier prey among distant stars. The translation finished, and the chamber fell into absolute silence. The implications were clear. The Void Devourers were offering to leave the galaxy and find food elsewhere, not because they had been defeated, but because humans had made conquest more expensive than it was worth. Nodded as if she had expected this. Predators are practical. If hunting in one area becomes too dangerous, they move to easier hunting grounds. We cannot stop them from threatening other galaxies, but we can make them leave ours alone. She looked around the chamber one last time. The question now is what happens next. The Devourers will leave, but they will remember this galaxy. If we show weakness again, they will return. If we go back to your old ways of thinking, they will come back stronger and smarter. The Eternal Chorus sang a question. What do you propose? Smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. I propose that the galaxy grows up. You have spent so long being civilized that you forgot how to be strong. You built perfect societies, but you forgot to build societies that could survive imperfection. She activated her communicator one final time. Admiral, the Devourers are signaling withdrawal. Maintain pursuit formations, but do not engage unless they change course toward inhabited systems. Acknowledged, came the Admiral's response. All human forces maintain aggressive posture. We are not out of this yet. Clipped the communicator back to her belt and looked at the assembled representatives. The human delegation is withdrawing from this council permanently. We will no longer participate in galactic governance as subjects or junior partners. The chamber exploded in protests. Voices demanded explanations and threatened consequences, waited for the noise to die down. From now on, Earth and all human colonies will govern themselves, she continued. We will trade with whoever wishes to trade fairly. We will defend whoever asks for our help and accepts our methods. But we will never again sit in a corner while others decide our fate. She turned back toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Any species that enjoyed the protection our actions provided today should remember who gave it to you. The next time you think about calling humans primitive, remember that primitives do not run from their problems. We solve them. Walked through the chamber doors for the final time. Behind her, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how their entire worldview had just been shattered by a species they had dismissed as barbarians. The displays continued to show the impossible sight of Void Devourers retreating from human space. Ancient creatures that had never known defeat fleeing from converted cargo ships and armed civilian vessels. In the silence that followed departure, the galaxy began to absorb a new reality. The humans were no longer the weakest species in galactic civilization. They were the ones everyone else would have to prove themselves worthy of. Outside the chamber, walked toward the human shuttles with her head held high. Behind her, through the massive windows of Nexus Prime, she could see human ships holding formation across the star system, not hiding in the shadows anymore, but standing proud in the light of alien suns. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. More importantly, humanity would never look at itself the same way again. The meeting was over, the war was won, and the real work of building a better galaxy was about to begin.